now talking Deep Blue Sea 3. That's right, this is now a trilogy, and this one is directed by John Pogue and stars Tania Raymonde. And this is actually a sequel to both movies. Now, confusingly, if you have seen the second Deep Blue Sea, it's literally a remake of the first one. But this one actually canonises both movies. So it's actually a more of a true sequel, although it does actually replay some events from the first movie as well. Things like, oh, that worked, let's do that one, let's do that scene again. Anyway, but what is the story here? So we have another man-made island, a little bit like the first movie here, and we have some researchers on this particular island, and they're not actually doing anything to do with the genetically engineered sharks. They're doing just some sort of ecological research there. However, they are approached by this boat who are tracking 3 escaped genetically engineered bull sharks, although they're not forthcoming with that information, first of all. Now, this ties into the second film, and there is mention of the first film as well. And between these two crews, so to speak, they must now try and stop these 3 bull sharks before they can kind of mate, and because these guys are obviously being particularly destructive. We have some other elements here. There's perhaps a human kind of sort of antagonist. We have some messages about the environment, things like this. So let's talk about what works. Okay. It's better than the second movie, that's for sure. The second movie was just more or less a straight remake. It seems weird canonising both films, to be honest with you, because the second one was more of a reboot. But nonetheless, here we are. The movie actually has what I would say a medium budget. So it does look like it has some reasonable production value here. So I think you can kind of watch this movie, and it is a step above a lot of the kind of the lower budget kind of shark movies that we've kind of seen pumped out through the kind of the recent years. You know, we have some kind of quite expansive sets. There's some fairly sort of high octane action sequences. The CGI, I would say, is better than average for a kind of a straight to VOD movie, and we see quite a lot of the sharks here. So, in all respects, I feel this is maybe a grade above what we've seen in a lot of these kind of like low-budget kind of shark movies in regards to its production value. I thought the cast were fairly good, to be honest with you. They do seem to echo some of the characters that we've seen, certainly in the kind of the first movie here. And there are, again, some sequences that you'll think that looks weirdly similar to the sequence from the first film. Things like this, when we have our man-made, island start to sink and it's fill up, and of course the shark getting, etc., etc. We have the surprise death after a big speech, things like that. Again, it just kind of copies some of the beats from the first movie. There are some reasonable kind of gruesome shark attacks here with some okay gore. It's not trying to be particularly explicit, but I do think there are some fairly good kind of like kill sequences here, and we see kind of remains of different people that I think look pretty good. The action's actually fairly intense with this movie. I think it kind of goes on at a good pace, and we do get a variety of kind of action kind of set pieces. We have, I think, likeable kind of like protagonists, and somewhat interesting antagonists as well, I will say. So what doesn't work for me? Okay, this movie is really heavy on ham-fisted exposition. For example, there's a sequence where, and this is just one sequence, but there are a few instances of this, where we have like a kind of a drone that is pumping out seal blood to try and attract the sharks. And then one of the characters who turns around to the other, who is also a researcher on this facility, this oceanic facility, and goes, "Oh, sharks like seal blood. Thanks. Thank you for pointing that out in case the audience did not know it." So it does have some really clumsy exposition here. I have to say as well, I think the antagonists, although I actually kind of quite like them in a certain way, they were actually kind of quite fun antagonists. I'm not going to say, what happens. But I don't know, it seems a little far-fetched in regards to the kind of maybe the lengths that they will go here. considering what their original modus operandi is, I don't know if I was fully buying what they ended up kind of doing and stuff like that. It just seemed a little bit too OTT for their original kind of mission statement. That's all I'm going to say without kind of sort of spoiling anything. Although I think the CGI here is, you know, better, shall we say, than some of the other low-budget shark movies. There are still a few shots here where it just is a little bit silly and goes into OTT territory. For example, we have a bull shark jumping out the water, biting a guy's head off. I mean, the CGI isn't good in that sequence, for example, and also just the kind of the physics and things, again, don't make sense, and it just kind of veers into certainly kind of more B-movie kind of territory here as well. I do feel the movie has a little bit of padding, certainly in regards to some kind of human antagonists and maybe some other plot details. I appreciate having a little bit more of a intricate plot here, but I couldn't help but think, you know, let's save some money on CGI sharks by having some human baddies in this one as well. But overall, I think this is definitely a step up from the second movie. I think it is still super cheesy. The characters are somewhat kind of cliche, although I still kind of enjoyed them. And they do seem like facsimiles of some of the characters that we've seen in kind of previous films as well. And certainly it does ape some of those sequences as well. But nonetheless, I actually kind of quite enjoyed this one. For me, it was a better than an average sort of, you know, low-budget shark film. Probably not as good as the first one, obviously. Better than the second one. Maybe worth a rewatch at some point. 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.